Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be doing my May wrap-up. And in the month of May, I read a total of 17 books. You know, compared to last month in April, like in April, I read 29 books in 1 month. I don't know what was going on with me in April, but I was reading so much. And so May, comparatively, I read a little bit less, but it's also because May was a much more busy month for me. In the month of May, I actually went to 2 concerts in back-to-back weekends. I saw Kendrick Lamar and SZA, and then I saw Stray Kids in Seattle. And then I also had my cousin Grant flying up from California, and he visited for like 5 days, and it was really nice to catch up with him. So I was taking some time off of YouTube things this month, but I still managed to read 17 books this month, which I feel like is pretty great. I was working on some really fun reading vlogs this month. Like the one that I just posted most recently was the vampire reading vlog, which was so great and a lot more successful than I was expecting it to be. I also did another round of like the random number generator, chooses how many hours I read every single day for a week. I also, at the start of this month, I posted a video that was reading Jan's worst books, and that vlog was also a lot of fun. If you were wondering, over on Patreon this month, I did make an exclusive video for When the Wolf Comes Home, and in that vlog, I do like a spoiler-filled vlog and I give all of my reactions in the moment, and I had so many thoughts about this one. And then also, very soon in the month of June, I'm going to be posting another Patreon exclusive vlog that's kind of like a monthly vlog or like a days in my life kind of thing. And this one's more of like a lifestyle vlog, and I filmed all of the footage from like the 2 concerts, my cousin visiting, going to see a lot of movies in theaters like Lilo and Stitch and Sinners and all of that fun stuff. And so if you would like to see this monthly vlog, I'll have the link for my Patreon down below. It's going to be going up very soon in the month of June. I did have quite a big stack of books that I DNF'd this month, and you know, that's probably part of the reason why I was only able to read 17 books is because I was trying to read so many things and I was DNFing a lot. But you know, DNFing is good for the soul. During the vampire vlog, I ended up DNFing First Light. This is actually the sequel to Night's Edge, and I was really looking forward to this one, but I just did not care about anything that was happening in this book. I also DNF'd The Black Orb pretty early on. I think I only read the first chapter, and I just really didn't like the writing style in this one, but this one might be one that I'll come back to in the future. I don't know. I also DNF'd The Staircase in the Woods. Dude, I am so upset about this because this is like one of my most anticipated books of the year, and I got 100 pages in. I couldn't stand any of the characters. Same with Passion Project. This was a romance that I was actually really liking at the very beginning, but then very quickly this main character started to annoy me so badly. I also DNF'd The Last Love Note by Emma Gray. I'm starting to feel like Emma Gray just might not be the author for me. I got 64 pages into this one. I also DNF'd The Queen by Nick Cutter. This one also really hurts me. I got 105 pages into this book, and I had just bought this book like so recently. So I'm very upset about it, but I had to DNF this because I couldn't really follow what was happening. There was a lot of characters. I don't know, I just did not vibe with this at all. And then also most recently, I DNF'd At the Bottom of the Garden. This is one that I got 56 pages into, and it's just not hooking me. You know, I feel like sometimes with horror and thriller books, like I want to be gripped right from the start. This is one that I was so intrigued by, but like, I don't know, the writing just isn't really doing anything for me. So yeah, it's been a month of DNFs, that's for sure. I've been DNFing a lot of things, but you know, I'm happy to DNF because I feel like it prevents me from rating a lot of books lower, because you know, the great thing about this month is that I only had a handful of books that I gave like 1 or 2 stars. I did have a 1 star this month. It actually happened. So like all of my wrap-ups, I'm gonna start with my lowest rated of the month and then work my way up to the highest rated of the month. Also, did you notice, oh my god, the Summerween merch came in. Is it not so cute? Oh my god, this one is the tie-dye cropped hoodie, and it's the one that's in the cactus cutie design, and oh my god, I just love this so much. Like the colors of this hoodie bring me so much joy, and it also kind of like matches my nails right now. Can you see that? Okay, so starting with the lowest rated book that I had this month, this was my only 1-star book that I had this month, and it's Parents' Weekend by Alex Finlay. And I did feel kind of bad about giving this book 1 star. Couldn't think of a single thing that I enjoyed about this book, and so that's why I had to give it 1 star. The main reason why I was frustrated with the reading experience in this one is because there are so many characters. It's actually ridiculous. I want to say you're following maybe like 30 to 40 different characters in this book, because you're mainly following these 5 different families who all have these college students, and they're all going to be going to the Parents' Weekend. And so you get the perspective of not only like the 5 students, but each of them have like parents and siblings and friends and like all these people you're trying to keep track of. And then you have this one character who is a FBI special agent named Sarah Keller, and apparently she's in his other books, Every Last Fear and The Night Shift, and so she's kind of like a returning character, and I was like, I don't know who this is, like I don't remember those books, and I don't think I read one of those, and so I don't love getting the perspective of like an FBI agent. I just find it to be so boring. And then because of that, you're also following a lot of characters who are also FBI, special agents. You're following like the staff of like people who work at this college campus. There's just so many characters and like for no reason. I also just think that even though this book has like really short chapters, it just was not that interesting. It was not that engaging. I actually thought it was very slow paced. And then the payoff at the end wasn't even worth it. Like that's the worst part, is that I did not like the plot twist at the end of this book. I thought it was ridiculous and also like obvious in some ways. And I just didn't like it. I didn't like anything about this. I also, like I mentioned in my vlog, the way that these characters speak was just so stupid. Like nobody talks like this. The teenagers are like, she's crashy, bro. And he's like, crashy? What does that mean? And he's like, crazy and trashy. Like what the fuck are you talking about? Nobody speaks like this. One of the 2-star books that I had this month was A Cosmology of Monsters, which this is such a bummer that I had to give this book 2 stars because the beginning of this book was so promising. I actually thought in like the first 50 to 100 pages of this book that I might give this book 5 stars. Like I was loving it at the beginning of this. I don't know, there was something about the writing that just like instantly gripped me, and it felt very like Stephen King kind of a vibe. Like I don't know, it was cool. I really liked the intro because we're following this family, and I liked that the first chapter of this book, or like the first section of this book, is actually about this little boy's parents, because the main story that you're following is about this little boy named Noah Turner, and he sees monsters. But then the first chapter I really liked because you're following his parents when they were teenagers, and you kind of get to see like how they got together, and like how his dad is like really obsessed with Halloween and he loves all things horror. It says his father built a shrine to the horror with The Wandering Dark, an immersive horror experience that the whole family operates. Like, it was just so cool. It started out so strong and I really loved it, but then this book went in a direction that I was like, wait, what? Like, no. I didn't really like the turn that this story took, and it got very weird, but like not in a fun way kind of weird. It was more like an uncomfy kind of weird. And I just really did not vibe with some of the choices made in the second half of this book. I don't know, it was so strange to me. Like, I really did not see this book going in that direction, and it was a very uncomfortable direction to go in. And so in the second half of this book, I really couldn't bring myself to care about most of the shit that I was reading, and I feel like the tone of the book is very different in the second half. And so sadly, I ended up giving this one 2 stars. I just really didn't end up liking this a lot, and it sucks because the beginning just had so much potential. Another 2-star book that I had this month is Carmela, which I know, I'm so sorry. Look away. If you liked this book, I'm so sorry. Everybody seems to love Carmela, and I seem to have the unpopular opinion with this one. So I do apologize if this is one of your favorites, because I know that Carmela is considered a classic. Because as it says, this is predating Dracula by 26 years. Like, this book was one of the OG, one of the very first vampire books to ever exist. And I think, to be honest, my issue with this book is more of a me thing than it is an issue with this book. Because I don't know what it is with classics, but I tend to feel this way about classics very often, where like, I don't really get the hype. I have difficulty like connecting with the language style that's used in classics. Like, it's hard for me to get invested in the story because of that. But I also do think story-wise, like, this one was just okay for me, because I don't know, this story describes itself as being like steeped in sexual tension between this woman Carmela and the woman Laura. And for me, like, I didn't really feel too much of the sexual tension. Like, to be honest, it kind of felt more like insta-lovey. I also think because the story itself is so short, like, this one's only 156 pages, that it really didn't give me enough time to get connected to these characters anyway. And like, I don't know, I just really didn't care for the writing style in this one. It was just fine. Like, I appreciate what this book did for its time. I just don't think it really holds up as like something that interests me personally, so I had to give this one 2 stars. I'm sorry. Did have a handful of books that I ended up giving around 2.5 stars. Another vampire book that I read this month was Woman Eating by Claire Coda. This one is kind of like a literary fiction style of writing where we're following this woman who is a vampire, but it's kind of like a literary approach to the vampire. Like, this is definitely something that was unique. I don't think I've ever read vampire fiction quite like this one, because this story wasn't really your typical kind of vampire fiction. Like, this one was very much character driven. And I also really liked the way that the mother and daughter relationship was explored in this book, and just kind of like talking about her relationship with food in general and how that's been different now that she's a vampire, and like her struggles with like loneliness and like immortality. I thought those things were all very well done in this book. I guess I just wanted more plot in this book, or like I just found it to be a little bit boring at times. Like, the pacing was just so slow, it was killing me, because this book is only about like 230-ish pages, but it just felt so much longer. I also gave 2.5 stars to The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers. This is actually the first book that I've read from this author. I know that this is from the host of like the Crime Junkie podcast, and this is one that I was interested in reading because it involved these sister relationships, because this story is about this young woman named Nicole and her sister sister had gone missing a number of years ago. And there was another girl who went missing around the same time, this other woman named Jules. And so this story is about how this woman named Jenna, who was Jules' sister, kind of like comes into Nicole's life. And now they're going to try and find out the truth about like what really happened to their sisters all those years ago, and if maybe their cases were connected in some way. Something that I really liked about this book is that it is on the shorter side. You know, it's only about 260 pages, and it is a very quick read because the chapters are very short. Plot is constantly moving, which I really appreciated. But I also felt like I never really connected to these characters, or I guess I just didn't really care about their situation as much as I wanted to. I'm not gonna lie, like while I was reading this book, I was actually considering DNFing it a few times just because I was so uninvested in what was happening. But the saving grace with this book was actually the ending, like the plot twist at the end. There was a few different twists happening at the end of this book, and one of the twists I thought was so shocking. Like I really didn't see it coming, and it made me want to bump up my rating of the book. But then there was also like an aspect of the twist that I was like, damn, like I think you really have to like suspend your disbelief in order to even believe that that could happen. And like, I just don't know if I like buy into it. Like, I don't know how I feel about the plot twists, but I do think that they're decent plot twists, you know, because like I was surprised. And like, that's one thing that I'm always wanting in a thriller is just to be surprised. So I do think at the very least, this book was surprising in a way that I really enjoyed. So I ended up giving this one 2.5 stars as opposed to like rating it a little bit lower. But a lot of people really do seem to be loving this one. So please take my review with a grain of salt. And then I also ended up reading Fall for Him by Andy Burke. This one is a male-male romance that I've been really excited to read because this is from the same author as Fly With Me, which that was another queer romance that I read a number of years ago. I thought Fly With Me was just okay. I think I gave it like 3 stars, but this is one that I thought had so much potential to be really cute. And unfortunately, this is another one that I only gave 2.5 stars. Well, first of all, something that I think is a little bit annoying about this book is that the characters, like the 2 guys that we're following, their names are Dylan and Derek. And like to have 2 names that start with D and are like the same number of letters, I don't know, dude, it made it very confusing to read this book because I constantly was like, wait, which one's Dylan and which one's Derek? Like the names are just too similar, you know, like you can't do that to me, especially when I'm listening to this one on audio. It's just so easy for me to get it all mixed up. But something that I did love about this book is that we're following this character named Derek, who is an ER nurse. Like right at the beginning of this book, Dylan basically falls through the 2nd story of the apartment building and he lands in Derek's bed, who lives on the bottom floor. So these guys are basically neighbors, you know, like Dylan lives on the 2nd floor, he lives on the 1st floor. I don't know how realistic that is for like him to fall through the floor and fall into this guy's bed, but that's what happens at the beginning. And then it kind of turns into this story about how he's gonna try to like help him renovate so that he can, you know, go back to living in his apartment. But in the meantime, he's gonna be living with this guy because he doesn't got anywhere to go. There's also a dog in this book that I really loved. Like there's a really cute dog character, so it gets bonus points for that. But I guess I just didn't really get that invested in the romance in this book, not only because I kept mixing up these 2 guys in my head, but then also because I feel like there was a lot of miscommunication between them in this book that really started to irritate me. I actually think that this author, Andy Burke, like maybe this author is just not for me because I don't seem to connect with the way that this author writes romance books. I don't know why that is. I feel like sometimes it just happens that way, or like I don't really click with the writing. And I think this might be one of those scenarios. I just didn't really care for the way that this one was written. So this one I ended up giving 2.5 stars. All right, and then jumping into my 3-star books that I had for this month. One of the books that I gave 3 stars to is What Happens in Amsterdam by Rachel Lynn Solomon, which this was a little bit of a bummer for me. I'm not gonna lie that it was only 3 stars because Rachel Lynn Solomon, oh my god, she's so hit or miss for me. You know, because I loved The X Talk so much. Like that's definitely my favorite romance book from this author. And ever since loving that book, I've been always eagerly picking up the new releases, and I've never liked any of the books as much as I liked The X Talk. This one is about this woman who's an American and she's gonna be working in Amsterdam. And like one thing I can guarantee about this book is that, oh my god, it's gonna make you want to travel. This book definitely made me want to travel to Amsterdam. Like it had amazing vibes, amazing atmosphere. Something that didn't really work for me personally about this one is the fact that this book is actually a second chance romance because there's this guy in Amsterdam that she used to be with. I think it was like back when she was in high school or when she was a little bit younger, and she like really fell for him. And of course, like they had a falling out. They haven't spoken in years. But then she's gonna end up needing a place to stay when she's in Amsterdam because she has like kind of a falling out with her job kind of situation. And so he ends up offering her a place to stay that's at his family's like little guest house or whatever. And so it's kind of about like a second chance romance. It's like forced proximity because they're gonna be like back in each other's lives again. And they're trying to kind of like reconcile like what happened between them and what went wrong. I think my issue with this book, like why I didn't like it as much, is because I really didn't like this guy that was like the love interest, because I definitely connected more with her as the main character. Like I loved some of the things that she talked about with like her anxieties and her fears. I definitely related to her in a lot of ways. Whereas like the love interest man, I don't know, I just didn't really vibe with him as much. I also just think this romance book was like so boring. I listened to this book entirely on audio, and like I literally went 3 days without listening to like the last 25 minutes of the audiobook. Like I only had 25 minutes left and I couldn't be bothered to finish it within 3 days. Like I feel like that's saying something, you know, like I just wasn't really loving my time with this one, but it was fine. I don't know, it was 3 stars. It was kind of forgettable for me. I also gave 3 stars to The Lantern of Lost Memories. This one is a Japanese translated fiction that I was really excited about because the premise for this one sounded so cool. Because in this story, there's this little photo studio where people go to after they die. And once they die, they go to this photo studio and they have to like choose a different photo for every single year of their lives. And they're gonna be making a little lantern of lost memories, almost so you can like see your life flash before your eyes one more time before you die. And the concept is absolutely stunning, so cool. But the thing is that this book is divided into 3 different chapters. And so it's almost like you get 3 different stories of 3 different people who have just died and are going to this photo studio. And I loved the first chapter. Oh my God, I thought this book was gonna be 5 stars. I was so obsessed. First chapter was just so good. It was so moving. It nearly made me cry. But then I really didn't care for the second or third chapters of this book. Especially, I really didn't like the second chapter that much because the second chapter was about this 40-year-old guy who died and I just didn't really care about him or his story. And then the third chapter was actually like really freaking sad because it was about this child who had just died and there was kind of like some abusive parents kind of situation going on, and it was just completely different in tone than the rest of the book. Like it really threw me off. So overall, I ended up giving this one 3 stars, but it sucks because that first chapter, like if that was its own short story standing alone, I would have given that 5 stars. Like I loved it. I also ended up giving 3 stars to Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. And this one is I don't know, is it considered romantasy or like a dark paranormal romance kind of book? It's not my typical read, I will say that, because in this story we're following this character named Ophelia, and she is a necromancer, which is basically like a kind of witch from what I understand. And she's gonna be going to play this game called Fantasma. It's kind of like this competition. It says Fantasma only has 2 rules: stay alive and don't fall in love. And she's actually going to this place because she's trying to find her sister. At the start of this book, their mother passes away and they both inherit a lot of debt. And so her sister kind of joins this competition in the hopes that she's gonna like win a lot of money. And so she's going to try to stop her sister and trying to find her in this place called Fantasma. I think the concept for this book was pretty cool. I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this before, but that's also because, you know, this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It's not my typical read, but I really did like the vibes in this one. I loved the idea of Fantasma. I thought it was really cool. I liked the idea of the competitions and like kind of the eerie, creepy things that were going on there. But I think the reason why I ended up giving this one 3 stars as opposed to like a higher rating is because the romance in this book, in my opinion, was pretty cringy. And like there was just so many like smutty scenes when I was just like, what are we doing right now? Like it would be like a very intense moment and then it would just go directly into like a really smutty scene, and it just really didn't work for me. And I also feel like in a lot of these like romantasy books, the love interest always feels like exactly the same. Like they are just a carbon copy of each other. You know, like the way that they talk to her, like the dirty talk, and then like the nicknames that they give her, it's just all the same to me. So like I was kind of disappointed with like the romantic aspects of this book, but I will say this book did surprise me in the end. Like this book had a lot of like really fun little twisty things that were happening in the last like 50-ish pages, so it was definitely worth finishing. I don't think that I'm going to continue on in this series though, because I don't care enough about what was happening in the story for me to continue on, but I am glad that I read this book and that I gave it a shot, and I gave this one 3 stars. And then one book that I gave 3.5 stars was actually this audiobook called Maybe This Time by Carmela. And this is one that I was really curious to check out because I do love Carmela's book Ready or Not. Like that was one of my favorite romance books that I've read this year. And even though I didn't love Promise Me Sunshine, I was really looking forward to reading this one. And this one is actually an audiobook that's like only an audiobook. Like I don't think you can get this book in print format, and it's only available through Audible as well, which is also very annoying. I don't usually have Audible though, which is why I haven't listened to this one yet, but I did sign up for Audible recently on like the 99-cent deal just so I can get access to the Dungeon Crawler Carl books. Like that's like literally the only reason. And so I figured, why while I have access to Audible for this short amount of time before I cancel, I figured I would listen to some of the Audible originals, and this was the one I really wanted to listen to, especially because Noah Reid is one of the audiobook narrators on this book, and you might know him as Patrick from Schitt's Creek. So like that was really cool, and I think he did a really great job on the narration on this one. But this one was really cool because it was a romance book that involved some like time travel elements, which I really liked. It kind of reminded me of like the 7-Year Slip in a way. I think something about this book though that didn't really work for me necessarily is because it's audio only, so much of this book is just dialogue. Like I want to say like 90% of the story is just dialogue. But something that was really cool about listening to this on audio only is that it's really like made to be an audiobook. So like they add so many cool sound effects. There's like an insane amount of sound effects and music. It almost feels like you're watching a movie with your eyes closed or something, you know? Like it was really, really cool and very highly produced. And I really did love some of the time travel elements in this one. I think it made it so unique and so interesting, but I only ended up giving this one 3.5 stars instead of rating it higher, just because like comparing this to some of the other like time travel stuff that I've read, I didn't love this one as much. And same with the characters, like I didn't connect to the characters as much, but it also could have been because this is a very short audiobook. It's only like 5 to 6 hours long, but it was still a really interesting read, and I'm glad that I finally checked it out. All right, and getting into the 4-star books that I had this month. One of the books that I gave 4 stars to was actually Suffer the Children, which ended up being a pretty big surprise for me because I read this book doing the video that was like reading Jan's worst books. So I was kind of going into this not sure if I was gonna like it, but I actually ended up liking this one a lot. And I'm glad because this one is a horror book that I've had on my TBR for such a long time. Like this book has been out for a number of years now. And this one always, like the idea of it always intrigued me because basically this one is about this like almost like apocalyptic situation where there's this sudden outbreak of something that goes around and kills all of the kids in the world at the same time. Like literally within an hour, there's something that breaks out and it affects every single kid in the world at the same time. And within an hour, every child is dead, which is very scary to imagine a world, you know, where this is happening. And so what I liked about this book is that we're following a number of different characters. And I like how at the start of the book, you kind of get to see like an hour before it happens. And so you're kind of following these characters, like you're getting to see what their day-to-day lives are looking like. And then it's like counting down to when it happens. And then you get to see when it happens, and it's like crazy. Like the book was just so action-packed, it was so intense. And then I like that you get to see what happens after. And I like that, you know, this book kind of approaches this subject from like every different angle. Like how would this affect the economy? You know, like how does this affect what we think is gonna happen for future generations? And like what does this mean for like job security? And like, I don't know, it approaches it from so many different angles, which I really liked. But then the thing about this book that is like, whoa, crazy, and this is not a spoiler because it literally says this in the synopsis of the book, is that shortly after all the kids die, all of the kids come back as vampires. Like, bitch, what the fuck? Like, that's crazy. And so I really, really liked that because then it almost turned into like a Pet Cemetery kind of a situation where, because then it's like all of the morals and the ethics of like the parents are getting questioned in this book because it's like, how far would you go to protect your own child, even if they're not exactly your child anymore? I don't know. It was so fascinating. I really liked this one a lot. The only reason why I didn't end up giving this one 5 stars was because I didn't really connect with any of the characters, or I didn't really care about any of the characters in this book. Like, I think if there were some stronger characters that I could really root for, I probably would have ate that shit up. Like, I would have given it 5 stars easily. I also ended up giving 4 stars to Hungerstone by Kat Dunn, which this one was surprising for me because this one is actually a retelling of Carmela. And you know, you might recall that I just gave Carmela 2 stars. So after reading Carmela and then going into this, I was so nervous because I was like, oh my god, no, like I'm not gonna like this one. But I actually really enjoyed this one. And this one is a direct, you know, retelling of Carmela. Like, we follow the character named Lenore, and she has this husband, and then this mysterious woman named Carmela like comes into her life. I mean, I feel like part of it is that you can tell that this was a book that was written in today's times. Even though this book takes place in the same time period as Carmela, you can tell that this was something that was written, you know, more recently. And also the fact that this was written by a woman, I feel like this author does a better job with like expressing the like feminine rage, you know, and like the female rage, talking about how difficult it was to be a woman in this time period. There were so many good quotes in this book that I could read you. I mean, I read so many of them out loud in my vampire vlog if you want more of that. But one of the quotes that I loved is when she said, "To be a woman is a horror I can little comprehend." And I just think this book delivered so much more on like the gothic vibes and the tension, like the sexual tension between these women. Like, this was everything that I wanted from Carmela. Also, in that same vampire vlog, I ended up reading Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. And I'm so happy that I actually really liked this one too. You know, I was really nervous to read this one because, as I just mentioned, when it comes to to classics, sometimes, you know, like my eyes just glaze over. And because this book was published in 1976, and I also just hear so many people talking about this book all the time as being like one of the best vampire books, I kind of went into this one a little bit nervous. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh god, like is it gonna be for me? I don't know. I feel like this is one of those books that feels very timeless. You know, like this is something that I couldn't tell it was written like years and years and years ago. This one just had writing that was very digestible and like very easy to get into. I mean, one thing that I didn't love about this is the fact that there's no chapter breaks. It's literally just like blocks and blocks and blocks of text, but the book is broken up into like 2 or 3 parts. And I love how this story is literally just about this young guy interviewing this vampire, and he's just kind of talking about like the different stories of his life, like how he became a vampire and what he's been doing in his life since becoming a vampire. And this guy has got some stories, okay? He's got some very interesting things to say. There were a lot of aspects in this book that really surprised me. I also loved in this book the contemplation of like, how could I be a monster if I'm capable of like feeling love? And there was a lot of really deep and like thought-provoking, you know, thoughts happening with this character about immortality and like loneliness and like questioning if he's a monster and if he was created by God or the devil. Like, I don't know, there was a lot of interesting bits like that. I just really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars. I definitely do plan to read the sequel because I've been hearing from everyone that the sequel for this one is even better. Another book that I ended up giving around 4.5 stars that I was really surprised by this month is Love Letters to a Serial Killer. This is one that I just randomly decided to pick up, and I had no real interest in reading this until I had so many people recommending me this book saying that they thought that I would like it. I saw on Goodreads that this one actually has a really low average rating, so it made me kind of like hesitant to want to pick it up because I was like, what even? Like, why is it rated so low? And you know, after reading this book, I do think I understand why this book has, you know, lower ratings, but I love this. I gave it 4.5 stars. This book was so entertaining because in this story, you're following this woman who starts to write these love letters to a serial killer, like this guy who's in prison. She starts to get like obsessed with like this true crime case, and then she finds out that this guy is currently going on trial for the murder of these like 4 women. And so she starts writing him these love letters, and then he starts writing her back. And instead of like stopping and being like, whoa, that's crazy, she like encourages it and she starts writing to him, and they're just writing back and forth to each other. And this book is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, it's messy. The main character is very unlikable, but like intentionally so. But I love this. I was so entertained by this book, and I don't know why, but this book kind of gave me the same feeling that I had while reading like Yellowface or like Big Swiss or like Julie Chan is Dead. Like, I'm talking about a messy main character who we aren't even supposed to be rooting for, but like she's just so entertaining. Like, you can't pull your eyes away from the page. I do think why this book is getting rated lower though is because this book is pitching itself as a thriller on Goodreads, which I think is kind of weird because I don't really think that this is a thriller. It kind of reads more like literary fiction and like an unhinged woman character. But then the reason why I couldn't give this book 5 stars is because I do think in the 3rd part of this book, at the end, it does start to read more like a typical thriller. And I actually didn't love the writing at the very end because I preferred the unhinged madness of like the first 2/3 of the book. But then the ending of this book, oh my god, I was screaming. The last chapter, I was like, bitch, what? So I love this. I don't really even care. Like, I gave it 4.5 stars. It was very enjoyable and very fun for me to read. And I think that's one of the most important things with me with books these days is I just want to have fun. You know, another book that I had so much fun with this month is Fan Service by Rosie Danan. I got this book from the library because I didn't want to buy it because I was so convinced that I was going to rate this one low. Okay, because Rosie Danan has written so many romance books recently. I've given so many of her books like mid ratings, but the reason why I keep picking up her books is because of her book The Roommate, or Roommates, or whatever that one's called. I loved that book. I gave it 5 stars. It's one of my favorite romance books. And so I keep picking up all of these books by Rosie Danan because I'm like, maybe one day I'll find a new favorite. That day has finally come. Oh my god, I loved this. I gave this 4.5 stars. This was so fun. And this is exactly everything that I want in like a paranormal romance, because the main premise for this is that we're following this guy named Devin, and he is an actor. He was actually the main character on this really popular like werewolf detective show that was on the TW, aka the CW. I feel like this is very inspired by like the Vampire Diaries and like Teen Wolf, like that kind of thing. But anyway, it's so funny because he's an actor from the show, and now the story's taking place like years after the show's off air. He starts to feel like he's turning into a werewolf in real life, and he's so confused like how this can even be possible. So he enlists the help of this girl who's like one of the biggest fans of the show. But the thing is that she actually met him at like one of the fan events like years ago, and he was like a total douchebag to her. So now she kind of like has this like hatred towards him. Like, she's like, oh my god, he's just like a fucking asshole, loser. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the first 100 pages, I was like, yeah, like this is fine. I don't know, like they're cute, but like it wasn't really gripping me. And then somewhere between like 100 pages to like 250 pages, oh my god, I just got obsessed. Like there are so many scenes and I was like kicking my feet, screaming, squealing, like it was so cute. And I don't know why, like I don't know why that is. I don't know what about this just worked for me. It was so adorable. And I really think if you've ever been obsessed with some kind of like paranormal show growing up, like The Vampire Diaries or Teen Wolf or even like Riverdale or anything like that, I think you should check out this book. I feel like this book was written just for us. And then lastly, I had 2 books this month that I gave 5 stars, 2 new favorites. So one of the books that I gave 5 stars to was Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang. This is one that I mainly listened to on audio, and this book was absolutely incredible. This one's a new horror book that is kind of about the COVID pandemic, because this one takes place in 2020 as the COVID pandemic is like starting to happen, and we follow this character named Cora who is living in New York City. I feel like reading about the pandemic can be very hit or miss for me because I almost feel like it's something that feels like a little bit too soon to be reading about, but I can also confidently say that this is without a doubt the best COVID pandemic book that I've read so far. The way that this author just described the eeriness of living in New York City during such a scary time, it was so haunting and so atmospheric. There were so many beautiful quotes in this book, and the main storyline happening in this book is that Cora, she witnesses her sister getting like killed right in front of her eyes when this person pushes her in front of the train, and he says Bat Eater as he pushes her. And so in this book, there are a lot of important conversations about all of the racism that Asian Americans experienced during this time in America and how real and how awful and how sad that was. I think that's part of the reason why this book worked so well for me, is because you can tell that this was pulling from a lot of like real life scenarios and like real things that people were experiencing, and that's really fucking sad. But like, god, I loved this so much. I love the way that the sister dynamic was like explored in this book, because they had a very complicated relationship with each other, but then it's almost like you'll never get over the death of your own sister and how like her sister will continue to haunt her. And I think Cora as a character is such a fascinating character because her job in this book is that she's a crime scene cleaner. So she gets to witness some pretty brutal things on a daily basis. And just like the tone of this book and the writing in this book, there are so many quotes that I could pull to share with you because it was just one of those books that had like amazing quotes. And this one reminded me of like so many of my favorite horror books. Like it just had amazing themes. So I had to give this one 5 stars. I loved it. And then lastly, the last 5-star book that I had for the month of May was When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. Let's go! Which I'm so happy about this because this was my favorite book that I read in the month of May, and it also happened to be my book troop book club pick. So like, how perfect is that? This one was an easy 5 stars for me. Oh my god, Nat Cassidy has done it again. I'm a huge fan of the book Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. You know, he's the author of both Nestlings and Mary is a book that I enjoyed, but I think I gave it around like 3 stars. And then Nestlings was his most recent full-length horror book that oh my god, I loved. I ate that shit up. I gave it 5 stars. So like the fact that this one is also a 5-star and also one of my favorite books that I've read this year, amazing, stunning. You know, as I mentioned, I also did do an entire Patreon exclusive reading vlog where I dedicated a full vlog to talking about spoilers, so I will have that vlog linked down below if you want to hear more of my thoughts. I also recently just did a whole live show with Gavin and Steph discussing this book, so if you missed the live show, I will also have that link down below. But I think this book is best if you go into it not knowing really anything about it. All you need to know is that we're following this character named Jess, who is a struggling actress, and one night when she gets home from something traumatizing that happened to her while she was at work, she finds this 5-year-old boy like sitting in the bushes outside of her apartment complex, and she's like, whoa, what the fuck's going on with him? And this little boy is saying that he's trying to get away from his scary father. And there's a question in this book of like, is his dad turning into a werewolf? Like, is that what's happening to his father? And that's kind of like all you need to know about the story premise-wise. You know what's crazy is that that's all the book tells you in the premise, and I feel like that happens within the first like 50 pages of the book. So then the rest of the book, you're like, where is this going? What's happening? And this book has some of the most amazing surprises, twists. I just had the best time with this book. And then the ending made me bawl my eyes out. Like, I actually cried like a bitch at the end of this book. And I feel like that's something only Nat Cassidy can do truly when it comes to horror. I also think this book reminded me a lot of some horror books that I've really loved in the last few years, but at the same time, this one feels so original and so different from anything that I've ever read. I could compare the vibes of this book to the vibes of other books, but the plot in this book was so unique. Like, I never could have predicted this plot in a million years. I just love and appreciate Nat Cassidy for like taking some risks in this story and really like pushing the limits of like what's normal in a horror book. I loved it. So yeah, this was 5 stars. I tabbed so much in this book. It's ridiculous. Those are all of the books that I read in the month of May. It was a very great reading month. I mean, yes, I read less books in the month of May than I did in the month of April, but I think overall I had more success in the month of May. Like I rated a lot more books higher than I did. But let me know, how many books did you read in the month of May? What was your favorite book that you read this month? And also, if you've read any of these books that I read in the month of May, then please do let me know your thoughts on them. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye.